flying finish, 150, and then you finish a Rally GB. Yes! Thank you, everyone. Yes!
The Mini sort of rekindled a love that I had for rally. I was completely drawn in. Just to be sitting here talking to Dirtfish about this 20 years later, I mean, this would have been amazing at the time, but it's a never-ending story, thankfully.
It was extraordinary and it was life-changing, and to be sat here now is incredible. It was all about Mildred really, and it's something I will take with me to my last breath as one of those experiences of life that you treasure.
Just sort of knowing that we'd done the history of the Mini proud, I think, was something special that will always stay there. I got kind of really engaged in the Mini rally side when Paddy Hopkirk did the Monte Carlo back in 1994 when they re-homologated the car. So that suddenly brought it all to life. It brought all those black and white 60s footage that you see into the modern day for me then. I just got a Mini just as a normal car when I was a student, but I quite quickly got completely hooked on the way it drives. I started racing at first because it was much easier to access, and then started rallying. We did the Safety Devices Tarmac Rally Championship, and moved up to the British Rally Championship in 2002, and again won the class in that. And we started doing 2003, and then the phone rang one day.
And this poor bloke took a phone call from an idiot journalist who was like, "How do you fancy doing Rally GB?" And any sane person would, of course, hung up the phone immediately and thought I was some prank caller. But Neil, being Neil, kind of humoured me, and away we went.
I'm Neil Burgess, and I drove on the 2003 Wales Rally GB.
I'm Jim Holder, and I co-drove on the 2003 Wales Rally GB. And this is Mildred. I had a bit of freedom to try and do slightly crazier, bigger features. And I'd covered the World Rally Championship for a couple of years for MN, and it felt like it was time for an adventure. And I would always try, once a year to try and come up with a feature idea that was a little bit special. And safely say, with the benefit of hindsight, none was ever going to be quite as special as this one. So I cast around. I came up with the idea of co-driving on Rally GB. I'd done some co-driving in the loosest possible sense. And I think eventually I rang Jacob Ebery, the photographer, and said, thinking about doing this, who should I talk to? And my head was in sort of Evos and Imprezas and all this sort of thing. And he said, no, the man you need to talk to is Neil Burgess in the Mini. He said it's not only a sort of great personality fit, cultural fit, but you're going to have a mega story. And of course, the penny dropped. So I uttered the immortal words, "Have you got Neil's mobile number?" And then dialed it. From the moment Neil said yes, it felt like a great idea up until the point the reality set in. Not only having to be able to try and make pace notes, deliver pace notes, get us around the stages, all of these sort of practical rally problems, but also, frankly, raising the money to be able to do it and casting around slightly naively thinking, how much can it cost to do Rally GB? And then getting that horrible truth as the zeros piled on.
Yeah, so we bought it, it was a rally car, but like all second-hand rally cars, they're kind of kits of bits that are pre-assembled, so we rebuilt it. Yeah, so the single-point injection Mini was homologated in '94, and that was the year it expired. We felt a huge responsibility for the history of the Mini going into that event. We wanted to do it proud, and it was the last event without Super Rally as well, so we kind of had one shot at it. We had to get to the finish without retiring. It's an old car. It's 44 years since it was launched. The FIA have said you can't enter this type of Mini any longer into events, so that's it. because it's so short, the back end tends to kick up a lot. We almost went end over end on the last event we did. With no power steering, it's all down to my arms, which is going to be interesting after 4 days of Welsh forests. It was a long, hard recce, wasn't it? Particularly hard on the seats for the...
Yeah, we did the recce in a 1 litre Nissan Micra, kindly loaned by Tristan Dodd, who founded the Formula 1000 Championship. So I doubt a less powerful recce car has ever been seen on World Championship stages, and it was a brilliant car for us to do it in. You know, we were able to go at a speed where even I could write quick enough to get the notes down. But my goodness, they were the hardest seats I've ever experienced. I think by the third day, we'd borrowed some yoga mats from the place we were staying, and we'd kind of wedged them under our bums, just in the hope we might have some feeling left for the rally itself. We had to write our own notes. So we had Carl Williamson, who'd been obviously working with Jari-Matti Latvala, and the brilliant Martin Meadows, so sort of trying to nurse me through some of these experiences. Could I write notes? Truthfully, no. We were learning as we went. And in truth, I don't think there was a single stage that we went through where there weren't a few issues, shall we say, where I might get lost or I might look up and think, there's no resemblance to what I've got written in front of me. But that was the beauty of the partnership. You know, Neil knew what he got into. I was very happy to admit my deficiencies when it was going wrong. And we had a few moments, but yeah, we made it to the end. So I was absolutely aware as the team grew around me, particularly in the build-up to the rally itself. You know, this wasn't a laugh, really. It was pretty serious. Everything that had gone in, the organisers had helped us, finding IKEA to sponsor. Richard Egger had come in with competition car insurance. You know, I'd mentioned Tristan, I mentioned all these people helping.
It was my first time making notes from scratch before as well, because before we'd used the Patterson notes and, you know, modified those as we'd needed to. We ended up with a giant protractor stuck to the dashboard of the Micra, I think. A hint, really, just to remind us, give us a bit of a reboot at times. On the run up to a rally, there's so much to do. I think you've come out the recce. Jim had to then drive to North Wales to drop the recce car back and rewrite the notes. And I was obviously worrying about the technical aspects of the car. I'd thrown a spanner in the works with the service crew, and I'd become nervous about the clutch because of the amount of events we'd done with it, and the crew had been changing the clutch. And it's just all go, really. You're always on the move. Then suddenly you end up on the start ramp, really. And you have to then just deal with it and get on with it. So I think we were just, it was only the Super Special on the Thursday night, so I think we were just sort of focused on getting through that and getting the first one under our belts. It started great. I went along with 2 left-hand gloves, which isn't the most useful.
So, if we just drive to the Super Special and don't come home, it's not going to be much of a story. So it was nice to get underway. It was nice to come up with a solution for Neil's 2 left gloves by getting him to turn one inside out. And then I think it was on the way out of the Super Special, I got us totally lost. We came off the roundabout at the wrong junction, and I was like, oh my God, I've ruined the story already. You know, we're driving back to Cardiff to hand in our cards and for it all to go wrong. But we got away with it.
We did. There was also a car behind us, a brand new shiny Mini with number plates on from Mini UK. It was rammed full of spares that got a telling off from the FIA that chase cars weren't allowed and that it shouldn't be so close behind us. And that was all on the first night.
Luckily they flashed their lights and made me aware we'd taken the wrong exit. I was just warming up, you know.
Yeah, it's when you see the back end of works cars sticking out of the forest as you go around corners, that's when it really starts hitting home that the big boys are here and they're falling off the road. It's, you know, treacherous, and it wasn't easy.
From a journalistic point of view of seeing what it really entailed, you know, I was telling the stories on the stages, but I wasn't really understanding necessarily what they were going through in order to be able to achieve what they did on those stages. It was just a massive, massive eye-opener every second, from filling out a time card. You know, that stress of checking and rechecking a time card, checking your maths was up to scratch.
Yeah, I mean, we knew it was going to be a massive adventure for us. I mean, all of our service crew were volunteers, and you know, a lot of them were people I knew through mini clubs and things. And We knew it was going to be a huge effort for us and an adventure, but we just didn't expect everyone else to join us with it. Yeah, completely knocked us sideways, didn't it? The amount of support we were getting out on stages, and quite regularly on the way out of stages, we'd see the works cars going into the stage for their second loop, and we'd flash and wave and get flashes and waves back. So there was quite, even though we're at the other end of the field, there was quite a bit of interaction with the top crews, really.
Yeah, for me, it was about Neil and I and the service crew for those opening stages, probably that opening day. Didn't really take a great deal beyond that in, but we went through Walters Arena, and I think we arrived and all the flash guns suddenly started going off, and you could hear Mike Broad, even in the car through the helmet, you could hear him getting very excited. But it was the sudden realisation of what was going on. And then as we progressed through the ranges, up on the hills, and started to get a bit more confidence with the notes, and probably had a bit more mental capacity to start taking in what was going on around the car as well as what was going on in the car. And you got this real sense of the spectators getting behind us and getting really excited by what we were doing, and they understood, we weren't going to be the quickest thing on the stages, but the goal was to finish the rally. And I think people loved the fact that it was not just a Mini, but it was Mildred the Mini. It had that sort of cartoonish appeal for all ages.
Nobody at all expected us to get through the first day. We'd had quite a lot of newspaper coverage by that point, and we were in the WRC Shakedown TV programme. But I guess people thought we were a bit of a novelty at that point. But when we got through that first day and we were still there, and people could see that the team was really trying, that really picked up a lot of people. I think we were there to get to the end.
I thought we'd be home by Friday, actually. Friday night. I can confess now that I didn't expect us to get through the first
I thought
day.
your suitcase was small. So it's all going really well, but I had a bit of a feeling on Saturday morning. I think I turned to you and said, this is too easy, it's going too well. And that turned out to be right. And the alternator belt was suffering. Service crew told me before we went out on this night loop that it was struggling, this belt. Somebody was going down the M4 to meet up with my dad to get more belts, but it should be okay, but just treat it carefully. So I resisted putting the bonnet pod on as much as I could. We've actually got Timo Mäkinen's old alternator on there because it draws so much current for the lights. Put the bonnet pod on, alternator light came on. It's like, right, we've still got the water pump driven. Engine temperature started going up. We had to stop. Engine temperature goes up too high and we're not going any further.
It was a bit of a moment all in. You can imagine, I think I've probably quite adequately described my inexperience, shall we say, and ultimately there was probably nothing I could do other than hold the torch. I held the torch for a bit and then decided to join Neil under the bonnet, and that's where the drama really started to unfold.
Well, I'd sort of pushed on the steel fan thinking, oh, right, this doesn't go round. As I was coming back thinking, oh, I've cut my finger, you were leaning over me and pushing harder on the fan.
Thought I'd have a go, When all's going wrong, what can you do to make it worse? I did it, stuck my hand in, sliced my fingers open, started painting the inside of Mildred quite a sort of beautiful scarlet.
Blood everywhere by the time we'd finished, from the boots to the bonnet.
Yeah, I think I did. I went round the back to get a few tools just to make sure I'd made a real mess. But thankfully by then the safety car had caught us up and it had a medic in. So I was taken away not to cause any more trouble while I think he used sticky tape to hold my finger together. And while that was happening, thankfully, out of the Welsh forests emerged an army of wannabe mechanics.
I was struggling. This is the fan. That's sort of how we finished the event with it. It's fairly mangled and not fan shaped. We found out afterwards it was a fraction of a millimetre from puncturing the radiator. We almost lost all the water. It actually skimmed the surface of the metal cores. Eventually we got the belt slipped back on. So we got a water pump back again. Forget the alternator, that wasn't important at that point. And we had about half a stage to do in the pitch black.
Pitch black, and the brilliant co-driver had of course not marked in his notes at all where we were when we got out the car. I had no idea where we were in the notes. Neil
couldn't use the lights because we had no alternator, of course.
So I just remember thinking, do I try and find out where I am in the notes, or do I try and get these seatbelts on? I thought I'd do the right thing and try and find out where we were in the notes, until Neil went straight on a corner and we sort of teetered on the edge. And then I thought, I'll shut up for a bit and just get these belts on, just in case. It was an adventure, let's say, finishing that stage. And then there was another adventure to come to get to service after the stage. It was amazing. We got to the end of the stage and I was handed a slip of paper, which I suspect had come from Rally HQ, which was basically the time we had to be in service or we were out. You know, with the help of this other car providing our headlamps, and probably about half an inch from its bumper, we found the shortest route possible to service.
And when we got back to service, there was like a gravel ramp that got the cars up in front of a big screen as you went into service. By all reports, we cleared the flat bit of that ramp, slithered down the other side, and I threw Jim out to get the time as I headed back into the service area. Yeah.
It was pretty close to being excluded. And of course, I had the dual problem of getting us checked in, finding where in service we were, but also finding a doctor to try and do more than a bit of tape over my finger. So I got led over to the medical centre where the always lovable Dr. Trafford had assumed his evening's work was done. And he sort of looked at the finger and, you've got to be a bit careful about over-dramatising. I think it was, I can't remember, maybe 3 stitches across the finger. This had eaten up quite a lot of time and we had to get back to Cardiff for the super special. So he stitched it up, bade us farewell, job well done.
And I got back to service, kind of almost fell apart at that point myself, and got dragged off to the medical centre. In the meantime, apparently our service crew got deluged by all the M Sport and Subaru ProDrive mechanics coming over to see if they could help, to offer assistance. So M Sport in the end came up with a cunning system where they managed to move the alternator away a bit further so we could use one of the water pump belts to power that and somehow still fit it under the bonnet. Freshly patched up, we made it back to service, and yeah. Yes, I mean, I knew Phil Short through Minis, who was working as an advisor for Ford M Sport at the time. He was a friendly face that we saw when we got there. I didn't realise that George Donaldson had a Mini history at the time. It was only later that I found that out, and of course he was running the Subaru team at the time. Yeah, there was a lot of goodwill for the Mini there, and a lot of people that really wanted to see it get to the finish as much as we did, which we really didn't expect. And we got back to the Cardiff Super Special just to hear our demise being announced. They're all over the tannoys saying that the Mini's retired, it hasn't made it this far. So we're out the car, jumping around, waving our arms about, saying, no, we're here.
But of course it made for a great, spectacle for the crowd and everything. And it really, it was pretty special.
Yeah, the last day wasn't plain sailing. We stopped off at one point because we thought we got a puncture. Glanced around the car to double check. Turns out we'd bent the suspension at the back. It also turned out that the clerk of the course was giving Harry Rovanpera a call to see if we'd only got a puncture, because he'd parked up just down the road, we'd just overtaken him, and he just wanted to make sure that we hadn't completely retired. So we jumped back in the car again and off we went, and then got another puncture on the other opposite corner of the car.
It was a pretty punishing Rally GB. It was a bit earlier in the year, which helped us a lot. Probably 40th car on the road. We were the last car on the road. We were a long way back, but not that far behind the World Championship stars. And when they were retiring, we were starting actually to see them by their cars and getting a bit of acknowledgement as we went. So all this was building, and there was the threat of Margam Park at the back of our minds, and I did have a quintuple caution, I remember. I'd put at least 5 exclamation marks in the notes.
See, it was a great relief to finish the forest stages, but I was also quite conscious that the final time control, no matter what anyone said, was in Cardiff. Huge amount of confusion with just being swamped with journalists on the finish line after they made us do the little toddle around the grass like Peter Solberg did before us.
Yeah, it was a little bewildering as well. Yeah, it was a little overwhelming. Sadness that it was all over, in many senses. Maybe speaking more personally than for Neil, but we had no right to be there. So much could and should have gone wrong throughout that rally. So much did go wrong throughout that rally. And yet at every slip, something would emerge literally out the forest at times to rescue us. And it was just, it was a story that was almost too good to be true. I worry I didn't do it justice, if I'm brutally honest. I tried my best to tell the story, but yeah, it's lovely now to get a second chance at it.
Yeah, very, very special time. Just to be sitting here talking to Dirtfish about this 20 years later, I mean, this would have been amazing at the time, but it's just, yes, it's a never-ending story, thankfully.
It was extraordinary and it was life-changing. And to be sat here now is incredible. To be sat when I'm at home with a little model, corgi model of Mildred behind me. You know, it was all about Mildred, really. It was incredible. It was so special. And it's something, you know, I will take with me to my last breath as one of those experiences of life that you treasure.
To be standing there on the finish ramp with all the confetti and the Self-Preservation Society playing, just sort of knowing that we'd done the history of the Mini proud, I think, was that was my moment rather than the end amalgam. That was something special that will always stay there.